this new series of videos, I'm going to explore the techniques of seamless crochet from my book, Seamless Crochet, Techniques and Motifs for Join-As-You-Go Designs. And what do I mean by Join-As-You-Go Designs? What it means is that you're going to create motifs that you join as you go without cutting yarn between the motifs. It's a really wonderful concept, and we're going to start with the very simplest of motifs from the book. Imagine doing these 9 motifs in the traditional join-as-you-go method. You'd have 9 times 2 ends to weave in, right? So you'd have 18 ends to weave in. But look it, I was able to do all 9 with only 1 end for the beginning and 1 end for the end of the entire piece of the project. So no matter how big the project is, you'll always only have 2 ends to weave in. I'll give you an example. One of the shawls that I designed in that book, Seamless Crochet, was called the Eden Tile Rectangular Wrap. This had hundreds of these motifs. Can you imagine how many ends you'd have to weave in for that? But really, you only had 2 ends to weave in for every ball of yarn, and that took several balls of yarn. But anyways, that's not the point. The point is there's only 2 ends to weave in, one at the beginning and 1 at the end, because you join the motifs as you go without cutting yarn. In order to do that, we actually make motifs from a different construction method. We start on the outside, work our way into the center chain, and then work our way out, or center ring, and then work our way back out. And we work partial motifs and join them as we go, then come across and join them on the top. Then we start a next row of motifs from the outside working in and then working back out, joining them as we go, and working the bottom partial portion of those motifs, joining them as we go, and then coming around and joining them along the top. Then we do that for as many rows as we're going to do. Then at this point here, we come back and join all the way down the side edge to the very beginning where we started. So we have our 2 tails end up being in the exact same location. I hope that will make a lot more sense once we get started. Today I'm going to be using a worsted weight American Merino Wool that I make called Be So Brave yarn and a size H 5mm crochet hook. Let's get started. The sample is shown in Waves of Grain colorway, and for the tutorial I'm going to be using Flamingo. You want to start by tying a knot of yarn onto your crochet hook. You can use a slip knot, you can use a regular knot, use whatever method you prefer. And we're going to start with a chain 11. You want to slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slip stitching into the 5th chain from your hook counts as our chain 5 ring, and then you're going to slip stitch into each of the next 3 chains, and that counts as your first double crochet. Like that. We're going to work 2 more double crochets in the ring, so I'm going to take that starting chain and just wrap it with my pinky and move it to the right hand of the work because we don't need it at this moment. And we're going to work 2 double crochets in that chain 5 space. Yarn over your hook. Insert your hook in the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. Yarn over, insert your hook in the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. So we have the slip stitch in the 3 chains counting as our first double crochet and 2 more. We're going to chain 3 and work 3 more double crochets in the ring. Okay, so I'm going to compare that to our work now, and you see these squares are actually 4 sets of 3 double crochets and chain 3 corners. So for this particular first motif, the bottom left hand corner, this is how much we're going to do before we leave it and come back to it. So that's how much is going to be done partially for this particular motif. We're now going to chain 11 again. Slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Slip stitch into each of the next 3 chains to count as our first double crochet. Okay, we're going to pull our work to the right to get it out of the way. Just tuck it under your pinky, on your right pinky. Yarn over, insert your hook, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2. We're now working our double crochets into the chain 5 ring we just made. Okay, we have the 3 slip stitches that counts as our first double crochet and 2 more. Now for our chain 3 corner, we're actually going to make chain 1, slip stitch to the previous corner, chain 1 to join it. So it's chain 1, coming back to the previous motif, we're going to slip stitch into the center chain of the chain 3 space to join chain 1. So that chain 1, slip stitch, chain 1 counts as our chain 3 space. Work 3 more double crochets in the chain 5 space. Chain 5 ring, sorry. Then chain 3 again. 3 more double crochets in the ring. Okay, and so this second motif is also partially finished, but a little more partially finished than the first one. I'm going to set it down on top of our existing one so you can see where we're at in the grid of 3 by 3 or 9 motifs that are joined. So that's where we're at now. Okay, so we're getting ready to start this motif. We're going to chain 11. We're going to slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And slip stitch into each of the next 3 chains. So the first one counted for our chain 5 ring, and these 3 chains, slip stitches in the chains, counts as our first double crochet. We're going to flip our work to the right side so that we can get over it, and we're going to work 2 more double crochets in the chain 5 ring. Okay, our next chain 3 corner has to be joined to the previous motif, so we're going to chain 1, slip stitch into the corner of the previous motif's chain 3 space, chain 1. So the chain 1, slip 1, chain 1 counts as our chain 3 space corner. 3 more double crochets in the ring. Chain 3. 3 more double crochets in the ring. And that's where we're at. So we'll set this down. Okay, now, if you were going to make this wider, let's say you were making whatever, anything wider than this, you would continue repeating this for as long as you want, for as wide as you wanted this piece to be. For today's tutorial, I'm doing the 3 by 3 square, so I'm ready to come and join across the top of these. But if you wanted to make this wider for a rectangular wrap, an afghan, a scarf, whatever, you would keep doing this for the width and then do what I'm about to show you. So just a reminder, we're going to be joining across the tops here, but stopping here because we're still wanting to go further up. You only come all the way back down to the bottom here when you're done with your height. Then we come back and finish the left side. So now we're going to work across the tops here. So we'll do our chain 3 corner, 3 double crochets in the chain 5 ring, okay, now we're ready to join across this chain 3 space with another chain 3 to create the 2 chain 3 space corners here. Only we're coming at it from a different direction. Normally we do a chain 3 space here and join them in the middle, but now we did one on the bottom and we're doing one from the top. So it's chain 1, slip stitch into the center chain of that chain 3 space, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next motif's chain 5 space, chain 5 ring. Chain 1, slip stitch in the center chain of the next chain 3 space that sits between the 2 motifs, chain 1, and 3 double crochets in the chain 5 ring of the next motif. Set this down so you can see it. So we did exactly what I said we were going to do. We were going to come around, finish the tops of these motifs, join their corners, and end here at the top before that corner so that we can continue to move up. We won't come all the way back down to here until we're finished with our height, then we'll finish off the left sides. Okay, so we're ready to start the first motif on the second row of motifs. It's a chain 11. Slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook. Slip stitch into each of the next 3. Pull our work to the right so we can work over it. 2 double crochets in the chain 5 ring. Okay, and now we're going to join in this corner here. So what that means is we're going to be joining in the space that we joined both of those. So we'll do a chain 1, and you want to try to work into the same exact chain that you worked the previous slip stitch. It just gives you a really nice, tight, finished professional look. You could do your slip stitches just into the chain 3 space, but by working them into the center chain of the chain 3 space, it gives a really nice, tight, finished join. And then we're going to work 3 double crochets into the chain 5 space ring. Okay. And so we're only doing that much of this motif before coming back to it. And this is one where I've made mistakes many, many times, because what happens is on this second row of motifs, we're, besides this first one joining in one corner, the rest of them join in 2 corners. And it's easy to make the mistake of forgetting that on the first one, and if you forget it on the first one, you'll see it right away because the motifs end up curling up on themselves like a bowl or a hat instead of laying flat like this. So you just want to make sure that we only join one time in the first motif on any of the rows higher than the first row. Actually, the first one was the same way. Everything in this first column gets joined only one time in one corner. So now we're ready to finish the second row of motifs, which will each be joined in 2 corners. Chain 11, slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook, creates the chain 5 ring, slip stitch in each of the next 3 chains to count as our first double crochet. Flip your work to the right of your hook to work over it and work 2 double crochets in the chain 5 ring. Okay, we're ready to do our joining corner. So we're going to chain 1, slip stitch into the corner below, making sure to work in the same chain as the last join to make it nice and tight and professional. Chain 1, so it's chain 1, slip 1, chain 1 to count as our chain 3 corner. And then we're going to come back to our original motif and work 3 more double crochets in the chain 5 ring. Okay, now we're ready to join along the second corner here. So we'll chain 1, slip stitch into the chain 3 join below, chain 1, 3 more double crochets in our motifs, chain 5 ring. Okay, and now that motif is joined in 2 corners. We're ready to start the third motif on the second row of motifs. Chain 11, slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook, slip stitch into each of the next 3, two double crochets in the chain 5 ring, chain 1, slip stitch into the chain 3 corner below, chain 1, Then coming back into our working motif, 3 more double crochets in the chain 5 ring. Okay, chain 1, slip stitch into the center of the chain 3 space corner on the previous motif below, chain 1, 3 more double crochets in our current motifs, chain 5 ring. Okay, and our second row of motifs is partially completed. Now we're going to come across the tops of these just like we did in the first row of motifs. We're going to work across the tops of each of them, joining the way we did in those top chain 3 spaces, and we're going to end at this corner again because we want to do one more row of height. It's not until we're done with our height that we will come back down and finish all of the partially completed motifs and fasten off. So we're just going to come back again and work our chain 3 space, 3 double crochets in the chain 5 ring, chain 1, and we're going to join into the center chain of this chain 3 space between the motifs. Chain 1 and 3 double crochets in the next motifs, chain 5 ring. And you'll see we have two chain 3 corners joined, but instead of the traditional working on each side, joining a left corner to a right corner, we did 1/2 of each of them along the bottom and then did 1/2 of each of them along the top. So it's the same chain 3 join, but just worked from a different direction. So now we'll continue on. Chain 1, slip stitch in the center chain of the chain 3 space between the 2 motifs, chain 1, which counts as our corners, and 3 double crochets in the next motifs, chain 5 ring. We'll set that down, and we did exactly what we said we were going to do. We'd come around, join them from the top, but finish right here because we're not finished working our height. As soon as we're finished working our height, then we'll come back around and join at the bottom. So you always want to keep this side unfinished until the very end. So now we're ready to join one more row of motifs. We're going to start with a chain 11. Slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook to form your chain 5 ring. Slip stitch into each of the next 3 chains to count as your first double crochet. Flip your work to the right to work over it. 2 double crochets in the chain 5 space, or chain 5 ring. And now we're ready to work our corner. Only one corner on the first motif of every row of motifs. Ah, my tail got joined. Here we go. Okay, so we did our chain 1. We're going to come down here and slip stitch into the join of the 2 corners below. Slip stitch, chain 1, the chain 1, slip stitch, chain 1 counts as our chain 3 space, and work 3 more double crochets in our same working motifs, chain 5 ring. And set that down so you can see what it looks like. And again, just remember, this is the motif that's different from all the rest on the row. Make sure you only join it in one corner, and it looks like that. That's the important part for every motif in this first column of motifs. For the rest of the row, we're going to join in 2 corners, and then we'll come across and work the top. Okay, so we're going to chain 11. Slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook to form a chain 5 ring. Slip stitch into each of the next 3 chains to count as our first double crochet. Flip the work to the right to work over it. We're going to work 2 double crochets in the chain 5 ring. And now we're ready to work a corner, chain 1, slip stitch into the 2 joined corners, same chain space in the row below, chain 1, and coming back to our working motif, we'll work 3 more double crochets in the chain 5 ring. We're now ready to join in the second corner for this motif, so it's a chain 1, slip stitch into the corner join in the row below, chain 1, and we'll come back to our existing motif, or working motif, and work 3 more double crochets in the chain 5 ring. Set it down so you can see where we're at. Okay, so on our third row we worked up with 1 join, then we worked with 2 joins, and now for the third one we're going to work 2 joins again. And remember, this is what you would continue this second row for the height of your piece. So remember in the beginning I said we would repeat column 2 for the width? Well, it was row 2 of motifs that we would have continued for the height, and now I'm done, so I'm going to do 1 more motif and then join across the top and the side. So on this last motif, we're not going to stop after 2 corners, we're just going to continue on. But I'll stop and lay it down to show you again. Chain 11, slip stitch into the 5th chain from your hook, slip stitch into each of the next 3 chains, so that counted as our chain 5 ring and our first double crochet. We're going to flip our work to the right so we can work over it, yarn over, insert your hook into the ring, yarn over, pull up a loop, yarn over, pull through 2, yarn over, pull through 2, 1 double crochet, 1 more. So we have a total of 3 double crochets in the ring, chain 1. We're going to come around and slip stitch into the corner join in the row below, which is the second chain of the chain 3 spaces. We've been joining everything in the center chain of those chain 3 spaces to create a nice tight join in the corners. 3 double crochets in our working motifs chain 5 space, or chain 5 ring, chain 1, slip stitch into the center chain of the chain 3 space in the motif below, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the same working motif chain 5 ring, and set our work down. You can see we've completed that as far as we've completed the other motifs on this row, but now we're ready to come around and join them from the top. So we're going to work that corner, the 3 double crochets in the ring, and then we're going to join the corners along the top in that different way. Instead of joining corners from left to right, we're going to join them from bottom to top. Chain 3, 3 double crochets in the chain 5 ring, chain 1, slip stitch into the center chain of the chain 3 space between the motifs, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the chain 5 ring of the next motif, chain 1, slip stitch into the center chain of the next chain 3 between motifs, chain 1, and 3 double crochets in the next motif's chain 5 ring. Now, this is the point where you could say, oh, you know what, I want to grow in height some more. Then you would continue, and that you would call that a repeat of row 2 of motifs. But we're done now, so we're calling it the 3rd row of motifs, and now we're going to come around and basically, if you think about it, do the joining top like we did at the top of the row 3 of motifs. To complete column 1 of the motifs is done exactly the same way as the tops of all the other ones. So we're going to chain 3, which counts as our corner, and now working along the sides of the motifs, we're going to work 3 double crochets in the chain 5 ring, chain 1, slip stitch into the center of the chain 3 between the motifs, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next motifs, chain 5 ring, chain 1, slip stitch into the center chain of the chain 3 between the motifs, chain 1, 3 double crochets in the next chain 5 ring. Remember that chain 3 from the very beginning? We can now slip stitch into the top of it. So the chain 3 of this corner is actually already finished. We're going to fasten off. And we've now worked 9 crochet motifs. We have joined them as we go, and we only have 2 ends to weave in instead of 18. How fantastic is that? I hope that this has been exciting for you and really opened your mind to a new technique. Couple things to remember: because we're working in that meandering fashion, unfortunately, if you've made a mistake over here and you're up here, you will have to unravel back to that point. So keep that in mind. Mistakes do take a little bit longer to fix in this method of crochet than in the traditional join as you go with cutting yarn technique, but you also save an awful lot of time in weaving in ends and really have a more secure fabric joining them this way. This is the very simplest technique from Seamless Crochet. In this series of videos, we're going to work our way through the book, and after starting with the simplest one, we'll work our way through to some of the more advanced motifs and still show you how to join as you go without cutting yarn and having only 2 ends to weave in at the end of your project. For more information on ordering the book or Be So Brave yarn, please visit my website, KristinOmdahl.com.